Today we're going to take a little time and show you some stuff about a Shigiya grinder that has automatic infeed, plunge grinding and traverse grinding. So right now I have the machine, the cover off, because I had to get in there and I thought this would be a good time. The infeed cylinder is right here, and this is your cross feed screw that goes off under the wheel slide. Right now this is shown all the way in the rear position, and my 0 or size light is lit. In the manual mode, when you have the selector switch on manual, when you go back and forth with the wheel slide, this is going to stay all the way in the back. It's traveled as far back as it can go. It's up against a dead stop, so there's no mushiness. When you're going to work with this machine by hand in the manual mode, grinding your parts by hand, only using the rapid in and out, but feeding in by hand, you have to be in the manual mode so that this cylinder feeds all the way in and that light is on. So that's what they mean by the manual. Now when you go to automatic and try to retract, now the first thing that happened is these are a double gear here, and this is a hydraulic clutch. The gear in the front is loose until I go into an automatic mode, and then it snaps in. It's held in place, I'm assuming hydraulically. So it now is locked with the gear in the back. Our wheel slide has gone back, and this has gone to its full extent. Now that's the maximum amount that the machine will feed. When we press the cycle start button, we wait for this to start. There it starts. And I can control this with my feed valve here. When it gets to the end of its travel, it's going to hit that limit switch and it's going to start the spark out or tell you that it's at the end of its travel by turning on. When we go back, it goes out. Now if you don't want to go out the full length, the switch on the side over here is what stops that from going to its full extension. So you can eliminate time in grinding by not having to grind a lot of air. When you set on this dial down here your stock removal amount, one of those cams that you're moving with that dial is going to hit this switch so that you don't feed all the way out to the full 40 thousandths in feed that this machine can do. So we'll start another cycle. Starts to feed. Now this switch here, the other dial on that, is your fine feed. When I hit that switch, you're in fine feed, and the fine feed is on a cam, and the cam is long enough to keep this on, because if it goes off the switch, it goes back to its coarse feed. So it'll go down to 0, close to 0, you start your fine feed, and you got to open up that valve a little bit. It gets down, it makes that back switch there, starts our spark out timer, and then the whole thing goes back. If you hit this, that's as far back as it'll go. So if you're only taking 10 thousandths off your workpiece, you set the dial so that when the wheel backs up 12 thousandths or so, it's going to hit this switch over here. Well, let's put it back in manual. Let it feed all the way down to its till it stops. All right, now I'm going to swing over here. Now we're going to take this dial here. Here's your big cam that rides on the spark out on the bottom switch here for your fine feed. And this pole here comes around and hits the other switch for your stock removal setting. So when you set this on the machine, you want to be looking at your 0 and your little adjustment line there. And then you want to keep your eye on these two cams and make sure you don't hit one of those switches there and damage them. Now this is going to just go right in there, jiggle it in so it gets in there with that gear. So if I want to set this now, so that I take 20,000 stock removal, and I'm going to start my fine feed just in front of the 20, the line in front of the 20, and I'm going to lock this down. Then I'm going to go back into my plunge mode and retract the slide, and this is going to back up, and you're going to read 0 here. On your hand wheel, when you have the hand wheel slid on there, your dial should read your 20,000s stock removal. So now when we start this cycle, slide comes in, goes into the fine, we start our feed. When the cam comes around and hits the switch on the bottom, we go into our fine feed, you have the green light on up there. And then we hit our spark out switch, start our timer, and this is only going to back up to your 20,000s and stop right there. That's what you're doing with this. You're adjusting the cams where they're going to hit the two switches. Your stock removal, that's how much it backs up, and your fine feed, that's when your fine feed comes in. All right, I have to button this all up. We're going to come back and I'm going to show you the whole thing run as a cycle. Thank you. All right, so we're going to come back and continue with the little conversation about the in-feed mechanism. So I put everything back together, and up here you see that I have my red light, so my cylinder is all the way fed in. And now I have my selector switch here on manual. So now is the time you put your part on the machine, whether you're working between centers or on a faceplate or on a chuck. Now's the time you can bring your wheel slide in or out, all right? Make sure you're going to clear everything. You come in, you're going to start your work rotation, and you're going to be coming up on your workpiece manually with your hand wheel here until you touch it, and you're going to get your taper all straightened out. You're going to come down, you're going to get your part, the first part, the master part, up to the right size. And then you're going to loosen your little dial ring here and just, set this thing to 0. And there's a dead stop here that we can engage once we know everything is right. So you fed this in by hand. You can grind your workpiece. You can go out. You can measure what you did. You can make an adjustment here, go a little more or a little less. Come back in, do it again. None of this is moving because you're in manual, and this thing has already fed itself all the way to its solid stop. Now, when you come back in on your workpiece and you said, okay, I had to take 5,000s off, and I want to give it another 2,000s for stock for safety, you come down to this dial here, you loosen up this knob, and you turn the whole thing to 7. 7. And then you have another outer setting ring where you can gotta put my reading glasses on. A small little scribe line that you set up, let's say at 5. This is going to be a quick little plunge grind. Tighten this up real nice. And then when you put this back into the plunge mode, you're going to engage that clutch that we showed you earlier. The two gears are going to go together now. And when I retract this, it's going to back it up until it makes those switches in there and stops it. So now it's backed up. Now you have to just come in. We're in plunge, so this is the automatic cycle. You start the feed, you go into the fine feed mode already. Gets to 0, and your time comes on. So that's it. Traverse grinding you do the same way. You can have the stop set. There is a physical stop here at 0. You don't want the wheel, you don't want this to come upon the physical stop before this cylinder is already fed out. But you can time it up and you can adjust it so that it'll do that. This has an adjustment if you're not exactly on 0. This has an offset little adjustment here where you can change it and then lock it down. And your dial here, you can set this by just loosening the screw and moving it a little bit more or less. And that's it. Thank you very much.